Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show with your host, Phil Tarrant.
Good day, everyone. It's Phil Tarrant here. Thanks for joining us on the Smart Property Investment Show. Always a pleasure to have you on board, joining us as we navigate this crazy world, which is property investing, creating wealth through property, which is the backbone of the show and of smart property investment. And we're always looking at different ways to approach the traditional actions and activities that happen in investing creating a portfolio, whether it's buying, whether it's selling, whether it's managing, whether it's renovating, whether it's financing. We live in a very interesting age where there is some really smart people coming into this space who are approaching what has been always done a particular way differently, a lot of it augmented through technology. So today we're going to get into some property tech based stuff. We're going to be looking at how one particular organisation is looking to change the way in which people sell their properties. And if you keep connected with the market and the media, you read the papers and even listen to the Smart Property Investment Show, you'll hear of a lot of different people coming into this market now and considering ways in which to change the way things are done. So joining me today, I have Adam Rigby. He's the CEO of Upside Realty, and he's trying to change the way people sell properties. How are you going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Phil.
So this, are you guys... We'll get into the meat of it. Are you guys PropTech, so property tech, or are you a real estate agent, or are you somewhere in the middle?
Well, I guess PropTech is the sexier name for it. Yeah. But yeah, we do have agents. So we are actually an agency, a fully licensed full service agency, as well as having a technology that helps get a better result for us and our vendors and buyers.
Okay, so chat us through Upside. What is it? What does it do? Why is it different?
Yeah, so I think what we've done is we've tried to approach the whole agency business as if you were to build it from scratch today. If you had, a clean slate, no legacy history, no, 100-year-old franchise agreements, etc. in place, and you were to do it from scratch, what would you do and what do consumers want? And, what we've seen is there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the pricing in the space, the service levels, and the transparency around the process. So what we've used technology to build a platform, which means that vendors and buyers can see everything that's happening during the process. We've got an amazing pricing, policy and approach, which is a flat fee of $7,500 for a private treaty and $8,500 for an auction. And what we're doing is lifting the service levels you get for that, and we're seeing great results.
So, really interesting. I like where your headspace is, and I guess your approach to this is that if you're building this from scratch without any legacy or historic way of the way things are always done, you've rethought this. And looking at your background, and you were involved CEO of InfoChoice, which was I think one of the first real comparison sites back in the day, right? And that was obviously a very successful business, and it's gone on to new things under new stewardship. But so this thought process about, okay, how do we provide information to people easier, more succinctly, that gives them the power to make decisions, is part of your DNA. So you've pulled that into Upside. So you're looking to use technology to augment the skills and capabilities of the individual, the human. Is that pretty much what it is?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things we use the technology for. One is really, increasing the transparency of the process. So just like, consumers love the fact when they order an Uber, you can see where the car is, how far away it is, you can get an estimation of a price. Right? That's become second nature to us now, and it's what we expect in modern products. And when you look at the way that real estate used to be sold, is that it was pretty much, all the communication, all the information was through your agent via telephone. And really, that's still most of the way agents work today. So how many people saw the property, where you're at with getting it prepared for the campaign, what's the negotiation process, all of that is kind of hidden unless you have a conversation with the agent. So what we've done is we've opened all of that up so that you can log into your private website and see every step of the process of selling your property. And that's fantastic, particularly in the investment space, if you're not, one, in the same location as your property or your agent, so it's much harder to contact them. We've sold properties for vendors who are overseas, so even that is even more effective because they can log in in the middle of the night our time and get the full update that they want to get on a daily basis. So we think that transparency is a very important part of giving consumers the service levels they want. Secondly, we use it to really increase the efficiency of the organisation. So, we obviously, we get inquiries in digitally these days. So, we get an inquiry in, we get communication, and then we can obviously make sure that the organisation is responding in a very timely fashion. We have a 24/7 call centre if there's any questions from vendors or buyers. All of that is tracked and managed properly in a very advanced, integrated CRM, so that we can deliver a much higher service level to our customers. And it's really just about, as you sort of described in your intro, if you were to do things from scratch with a new thought process, using modern technology to do a better job at something that's been done a certain way forever, well, that's what we've tried to do.
So I'm going to challenge you on a couple of things here, which
Absolutely.
is a bit of fun with this, because I get what you're saying. It makes sense to me. But I also get and understand working within smart property investment across real estate. I connect in with people that run big franchise groups and large family-based or generational organisations, which are huge and sell a lot of properties across Australia. So I always hear two sides of every argument. So on one side, you're changing away using technology to empower the vendor to have a lot more insights into the process, and as part of that, saving them money through commission. So it's a flat fee, etc., as you explained, which is cool. It's very modern. The other side, I would have people saying to me, Phil, if an agent is getting paid 7 or 8.5k or at auction, you're probably not getting a good agent. There's someone who is not the top of the tree. And another argument would be, well, if it's a $2 million property, wouldn't you want to maximise the sale price of that and try and get 2.1, 2.2, and only an agent who's commission based can achieve that. So let's break that down. The first one,
absolutely,
a fixed price versus commission. Are you still going to get the value? Are you still going to get the price that you need?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things to getting a good price that we think are very important. Like, firstly is making sure you understand the how to market the property and what does that look like. So that's everything from making sure the photography shows it and its features off well. Secondly, it's making sure that you're obviously marketing it in the right locations. Thirdly, it's making sure the price is right. That's very important. And lastly, it's making sure that the conversations with the buyer and the buyers are very well serviced, because that's actually where you can lose buyers who can come to the table. If they're not serviced properly, then that means that you could lose genuine buyers in the process. And lastly, I think if you can create a contested purchase or purchase process, then obviously that's when you get your best outcomes, right? So whether that be in private treaty or auctions, both possible, it's just creating that tension and the competitiveness during the pricing and the transaction. So those things hold true regardless, right? So we use all those processes just the same in a flat fee model as anyone would in a commission only model. That is the way an agent is paid, right? So to suggest that the pricing that you're offering the service is necessarily determining what the behaviour of the agent is not correct, right? The real estate industry is quite unusual in that, it's a commission-only industry in sales. Most of sales in the world doesn't work that way, right? And they still get great results. So it's a legacy of a certain process and thinking that the industry has started with. Doesn't mean that it doesn't get a good result.
Okay. So by spending $7,000 versus a commission base, it means you're not getting a agent who isn't as capable as a commission-orientated agent.
All of our agents were experienced agents doing commission-only roles before. So, I mean, it's the same agents, and we've, the guys in Sydney, we've just started up in Sydney, and the average years of experience is 14 years in major brands. Okay. So, and, we go through great lengths to make sure we hire very good agents. That's part of what we do. We pay above the normal expectation for an OTE agent. So again, you've got to divorce these two issues, So, and we do give our agents a bonus based on results they get, and that can be every, combination of things of, satisfaction of the customer, the result, number of sales, etc. Right? So the way you pay the agent doesn't necessarily influence the cost of what you're asking the consumer to pay. And I'll give you a couple of thinking points. One, property has risen, 600%, I think, in the last 20 years. Now, commissions have ridden the back of that, right? Now, if you look at the salary increase over the same period, it's more like 200% or 150%, right? So why is it for the same role and for the same job that they're getting a 300% lift on salary over everyone else? Has the job become more complex? Are they offering better service, better outcome? No, all of those things are not true. It's just a coincidence and a mechanism because of the way the market has behaved, as opposed to the fact that 50 grand is the right price to get a good person. That is an arbitrary number that just happens to be the case.
Yeah, I get that. But you know, the point I guess is valid in that agent's salary have risen in line with the speed of market growth. And if you operate in Sydney and Melbourne, you probably doing all right the last.
You've seen great growth.
Stuff. So you mentioned that. I guess two things. How do agents, and I'm sort of getting to the business of real estate because I'm interested in it as well as there's stay with us investors because there's info for you coming. How do agents work for you? Are they sort of independents? Do they work underneath you, or are they actually part of the brand? Or
yeah, they're full-time employees.
Okay.
And we pay them a salary and we give them a bonus based on their performance.
Okay, and that's slightly different to how most agents operate. They're normally sort of commission only. You know, you eat what you kill type of scenario. So these guys are salaried and incentivized to deliver the best outcome for their vendors as possible.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, so this still got skin in the game. That the better they do their job,
yes,
the better they do from a salary perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you like most non-real estate sales roles, you know, they have a base salary, which is, you know, enough for them to, you know, exist, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they've got upside in their salary component by achieving goals for the company, which means achieving goals for vendors and servicing buyers well, etc.
Okay.
So, you know, they still absolutely need to perform and they have huge incentive to perform, but it doesn't create bad behavior either, right? So I think there's an interesting thing when you think about commission-only sales, which is very counterintuitive, which is you think automatically, oh, if I'm getting a cut of the sale price, I'm just going to push as hard as I can to get the highest price possible. And that's the logic that gets used against us all the time.
Yeah.
But it's actually completely flawed because, you know, there's a couple of things. One, there was a study in the US and a book written called Freakonomics, which I recommend, you know, the audience look at because it actually talks about this exact topic. But what you'll find is that the incremental commission that an agent will earn by pushing a price by $10,000 or $20,000, it's not worth their risk to maybe lose the buyer. It's just not worth it. So they'd rather close the sale and guarantee themselves their 20, 30 grand commission and then quickly move to the next potential rather than try and push for another 2-3 weeks to get another $200,000. It doesn't add up if you think about it, right? Because if you think about your month and you said, okay, to get a property on board, put it through a campaign, do all the open houses, let's call that a month's work, right? We'll oversimplify it, but let's call it a month's work if it's going to auction. All right, so let's say you do that and you're likely to get, say, $20,000, $30,000 for that month. And then, but by pushing it another $20,000, you're going to get, what is that, $400? So that takes you another 2 weeks of mucking around, right? So you've got 2 weeks where you're earning $30,000 and you've got 2 weeks where you're earning, you know, a few hundred.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? No.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive, I know, but actually when you work through all the details of it and you lived it, and anyone who's worked in commission-only jobs knows this to be true, but that's absolutely the case.
Well, things that you need lots of deals, so the more deals you do, if you can keep a price point reasonably high. But it still comes back to the argument that you're working in the vendor's best interest. So the person's selling the property. If you're a property investor, you're the person selling it. So I guess put that into the context, if you've got a commission-only agent who keeps pushing, saying, I'm working in your best interest to lift your sales price to potentially get you another 10 or 20 grand. Number one, they might lose a deal because it means the property's in the market longer and that person might go somewhere else who was buying it. And number two, the longer your property's on the market, the less attractive it is to buyers because they feel as though it's overpriced or there's something else wrong with it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So this is the matrix of many things working in unison. So
right.
there's not a definite answer to it, but I acknowledge what you're saying though. So two sides of every story. If you go and speak to commission-only guys, they'll tell you one thing.
And that's to say there's different services for different parts of the market, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, I would suggest to you that Upside works really well between certain price points, right? So between $500,000 and $3 million, we work really well, right? It's the right amount of service, it's the right outcome for the buyers. If you're going to sell a $10 or $20 million property, you need white glove service, very bespoke approach, right? A very specific, tailored approach to selling that property. Well, we're not set up to do that, right? And so, nor do we want to. So, an agent who's on full commission, that's perfect for them, right? I know it's a niche market, but still, it's perfect for them, and they need to do that.
Yeah.
But for the bulk of where we sit, which is in that, I guess $500,000 to $3 million area, there's massive savings to be had. And the outcome, is actually better in terms of they get better service, better visibility, and arguably the same outcome in terms of a price.
So if I was Phil Tarrant, property investor, selling one of my properties, and I sat with one of your Upside agents, and I'm seeing an Upside agent, and I'm seeing agent A from X franchise group and agent B from large local family-run real estate agent B, what would be the 2 or 3 selling points that an Upside agent would say to me during that pitch for my business? What would those couple of things be?
Well, I mean, obviously the price is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
So you effectively, if it's an investment property, we can get you another $20,000 yield on your transaction, right? That's a big thing. Secondly, you will have me working for you. I'm an experienced agent from your area. I've been in the market for 10 years. I'm going to look after you, make sure you get a best outcome by managing the process, negotiating with the buyers, making sure the house is presented well. And lastly, you'll have access to some technology that gives you full visibility of every step of the way. Every buy that goes through your open home, every contract that's been requested, every negotiation and offer that's been made, you'll see it online in your own very private portal that you can get access to at any time. And so that, and then, the next thing would be proof points. How can you prove that this is the case? Well, then just go to Rate My Agent, see all of our very, very happy customers, see our results. We had an auction in Melbourne. I think we got $160,000 above reserve. These things, we're getting great results, and they're there to be seen. So, and that's the other thing, proofs in the pudding. It's all very easy for me to say whatever I like up here, but, it really comes down to, are we getting results, and are our vendors and buyers happy with what we're doing? And that's transparent. And
you mentioned that your agents come from within the real estate sector, mainly on commission orientated roles. And I think you said the average experience like 12 years. I can't remember exactly.
Oh, that was in Sydney, but
they're experienced, right?
Yeah.
So why are they choosing to come and work for Upside versus company A, B, or C?
Look, it's a number of reasons we're seeing. One, I think a lot of them felt that there's been something broken in the industry for a long time, and it's been frustrating for them. So they see this as, this is what has to change to make it a better outcome for everybody. Secondly, I think this, the odd cultural issue in agencies out there. So I think particularly for, and I hate to say it, but particularly for women working in the industry, I think it tends to be more misogynistic than most. So we've had a lot of women who've been very frustrated in those environments and want to come to a much more, work-friendly, culture-friendly environment. And secondly, we do tend to put a lot more investment in our staff. So we put on regular training sessions, we give them proper inductions, we give them proper tools of the trade, which is, some agencies will do that, but a lot don't. So a lot just say, look, there's your desk, go for it. And that's, like you say, you eat what you kill, good luck, So, and a lot of people, some people can work very well in that environment. A lot of people don't. So, we are very, we have a full-time learning and development officer who's out there helping the agents do a better job at what they do. And so we invest a lot in the team. So, and I think there's also, we've got much more opportunity for management and growth as well.
Okay, interesting. I want to touch on coming in Info Choice. You've probably got some experience understanding mortgages and that type of stuff. But before we get there, if I was going to break down how you sell a property, you have the traditional way it's been done by a commission-based agent who will deal in your best interest. And we've spoken a lot about that on the show, how to choose the right agent, And Adam has sort of mentioned some of the proof points why when one of his agents will be out there in a sort of a pitch for your business. But then you have a business like yours, which is a flat fee, so it's irrespective of what you sell the property for. The agent receives the same fee, or Upside.
No, we charge the same.
You charge the
Yes,
same.
yes.
You charge the same.
Yep.
And then you've got for sale by owner stuff as well. So people who want to try and do it themselves. This is about the empowerment. You don't need to pay for an agent at all.
Yes. Yes.
Do it yourself. And then there's arguments against that as well around you know, do you know how to negotiate yourself? Are you going to be able to understand what the best price is? Who's going to be representing your market? What's your view of sort of for sale by owner orientated platforms, which is tech based?
Look, and I think, you know, they have their place. I think for people who are okay to do that, that's great. Personally, I wouldn't do it. You know, it's a lot more work than people realise. I think, you know, managing open homes and there's a certain skill in negotiation. And I think the big difference is having a third party negotiate for you. So, you know, when you're talking to someone about their home that you might be trying to buy off them, the ability for you to say what you really think and feel is you know, less likely. Like, you feel a much more obstacle in saying things that are going to affect the negotiation. Whereas if I'm talking to a third party, you tend to be a bit more honest. You might be, you know, I guess critical. You know, some people will be worried about offending someone. So there's a lot of dynamics where I think a third person helps a lot. But that being said, there's probably, you know, again, a small percentage of the market who can do it very well. They do it, they get a good result, and they're happy, and they've saved a ton of money. But it's not for everybody, clearly.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll touch on it another time, but I thought you answered that well. So, Info Choice, if you haven't checked it out, I think it lives inside another engine now, but you guys were pretty early days around comparisons, mortgage comparisons. You must have had your head immersed into loans and stuff as COO of that. What's your view of just securing financing now for property investors? A lot harder than what it was back in the day, or it's always been difficult?
Look, I think it's always been a pain in the butt, let's be honest. And I think it goes in cycles. Like, all the financial institutions have different internal focus and needs at different times, right? So there's a phase where they'll be more focused on, you know, securing deposits and being tighter on credit, and then there's others when they're trying to grow their book, right? So, you know, unfortunately, the consumer or the borrower is a victim to whatever the hell is going on in the market. You know, my view is that, you know, I think you start with understanding what your needs are. Don't start with a rate. Rate is the distraction, right? So I think it's all about understanding how much optionality you need. So, you know, some investors, if you're quite active, if you've got an interesting, you know, financial life where, you know, you might be a subcontractor or in business for yourself, or you might have a lot of investment going on, so your income is quite varied and your financial liquidity can be varied and all those things. So the logical thing to do is to say, how much optionality do I need and how much risk am I prepared to take? And so my personal view is start there and then work out all the features you need. You know, fixed, variable, drawdown, offset, you know, all those sorts of things. And then negotiate like hell with someone who can give you the features you want. Because it's always the horror stories about the break clauses you hear. You know, someone's gone super cheap, and then they didn't really look into it clearly, and they actually get completely screwed over because they have to refinance or do something, and they're up for thousands and thousands in fees. And that's not something you want to get caught doing, and that happens all too often.
It does happen too often. So read the fine print. Just with Upside, how would you explain it? Is it a digital real estate agency, or is it a real estate agency who has digital as part of its core, or how would you? Because I want to have a chat about PropTech, but I'm quite interested on your different horse and cart, cart and horse. You know.
Well, so digital only implies that it's all online and you don't really have a person involved, and so that we kind of avoid that. So it's sort of, you know, we call ourselves PropTech. We do, because it's all about the property space being, I guess, you know, enhanced by technology, which is what we are. But we are an agency. We're a real estate agency, fully licensed, got agents running around, you know, working for us, and we use technology to make the whole experience better. So again, Uber's a good example, right? Like, you still have a car pick you up, right? Like, you're not running on the back of your phone app, right? So, you know, but
and there's still someone driving it.
Yeah,
for
there's
the
still
time
someone
being.
driving, and you're still paying. So the service is the same, but the technology makes it a lot nicer and easier and quicker and all the rest of it. So that's kind of a reasonable analogy.
I spent some time, and I spoke about it on the show, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would remember back in October and November last year. I was over in California, Silicon Valley, talking to property and mortgage tech type people, and just really getting an understanding where the market is out there at the moment. They're pretty advanced and sophisticated, and obviously within Silicon Valley, there's a whole bunch of really bright young people who are trying to change the world. Some of them get it right and get a unicorn, most people don't. But what you just described there was very much the findings that I surmised from my time out there in that. And I sat down with your Salesforces and, you know, your big brands who know about this, and big guys within the property and mortgage space like you, Utilising and all this sort of stuff. And what they said to me was that technology is not going to replace the human. Technology is going to augment what the human does better. And particularly looking at buying real estate, and your generation Ys, millennials, and the next generations coming through, they said them even more so than our generation. I think we're probably similar age. They want to speak to someone, even though they're the most technologically sophisticated and advanced people who are never a millimetre away from their smartphone. They still want to talk to someone to actually get a transaction done when it's as big as a house. So they're saying technology will augment it or just empower the professional or the advisor, let's call it what it is, a real estate agent's advisor, to do their job better. And a lot of the stuff that they used to do, which was very manual and not necessary, technology will just replace it. So that's pretty much what you're doing. You're using tech to get the easy things right.
Yep.
The hard things being visibility, right, and empowering the advisor to do the job better than what they have done beforehand, and it's cheaper.
Yeah, and that's talking to an efficiency, right? So, you know, we can help our agents be more productive, and we can make sure that the service levels increase, and by doing that, you know, you become more productive, and therefore, you know, you can offer a better price. And that, look, it's very simplistic, but that's what's behind it all. You know, and look, the nice thing for me is when you see the end result. Like, so, you know, I've been a tech entrepreneur for, you know, 30 odd years, and as fun as it is to build these things and to create technology and to, you know, have a great culture in all those organizations, at the end of the day, it's hearing the stories about how you impacted a customer's life, or in this case, you know, an investor or a vendor who sold their property, super happy with how it went. You know, it couldn't be happier with the process and the service levels, and they got the great price they wanted. You know, that means that everything you did up front was working, right? And that's what we're seeing now. So it's a very rewarding time to be running the business, because we're still relatively new. So, you know, we're just starting to see all these great case studies come out now. So it's very, very satisfying.
And you think PropTech, property technology, will keep marching down this path? Do you reckon it's got a big bright future?
Look, I think it's going to be, you know, it's interesting. You've got a whole bunch of things happening simultaneously, which probably means we don't know where it's going to end. So what I mean by that is you've got fintech happening over in one side, you've got PropTech happening, which is doing a lot of what we've just talked about and making the process better. You've got media players who, you know, like Real Estate and Domain, who are, you know, kind of hit their limit in terms of revenue. So they're going crazy trying to work out how to extend themselves into much broader spaces. And then you've got things like cryptocurrency and blockchain, where, you know, how they're going to change the whole transaction process at the, you know, at a very fundamental level. So there's so much of these moving parts that at some point there's going to be some connections between them all, and probably no one really knows how that's all going to unfold. But one thing's for sure, it'll be hopefully simpler and easier, and, you know, you get better service. And that's, you know, that's, I guess, the goal. And that, you know, sometimes it works quickly and sometimes it sneaks up on you. You know, industries have changed overnight when people have been denying they'll change it all for years, and the next thing you know, bam, within a year or two, it's all changed. And, you know, property's been a bit like that. I think, I think there's been people saying there's no way that the flat price thing will take hold. Well, they haven't really looked in too many places around the world to see that it is taking hold. So, you know, and they are getting results. So, you know, you don't have to look too far to see that. It's just not necessarily in your suburb. Maybe you have to look overseas. Yeah. And
to Adam's point, I think it's all about the outcome. So
yes,
irrespective of how you go about doing this, i.e. selling your property, your investment property, you want to make sure that the person in your corner is doing the absolute best they can. And some people are going to be more open to a flat fee model, tech enhanced models, and just on that basis, what sort of customers are you seeing? Is there a particular type of customer?
Yeah, look, it's good that you asked that, because I had an assumption up front that we'd get, I guess, either the millennials or what I'd call tech natives, right? So I'm a tech native, even though I'm 1,000 years older than a millennial, but that's not been the case. So we've had, I think, the price point attracts all sorts. And then, then it's up to our agents to connect with the vendors, make sure they feel comfortable. And so what that has meant is that we've had everyone from, I guess, quite technical sophisticates who are overseas selling remotely through to, 70-year-old couples selling their property and actually not even having a computer. So, it's a mix, right? And surprising mix, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you got a target on your back? Are you sort of the naysayers and the anti flat fee guys sort of giving you and there's a cohort of people who are doing this sort of flat fee or a different pricing model? You caught much flack from them, or is it?
Look, we do, but it's pretty harmless, to be honest. I mean, I think we get a lot of agents trying to naysay on our digital advertising when they can comment. But I think, to be honest, we're probably the less of the enemy, because we're at least based, we don't take a full fee until we get a result for the vendor, right?
So how does that work? So I engage you, pay a bit of it, and then I pay the rest when it sells.
And you pay the rest when we sell the property, right, on settlement. So we are very much aligned from a financial and a fee perspective to you selling your property, which is the whole point of engaging with a real estate agent. Now, there are some other models that fundamentally take their fee up front, regardless of whether they sell the property. And I think, I don't think too many people think that's really best for the vendor, right? Because it doesn't necessarily create the right behaviour from anybody in the process. So I think, the ones doing that have probably got a bigger target on their back, to be honest, because at least people kind of can see, okay, well, they've got a different pricing model, and it will annoy the hell out of us that they're cheaper, but at least they're aligned to the same.
So if people want to know more about you guys, what do they do?
Just jump on our website, upside.com.au.
It's a good URL.
Yeah, it's a good URL.
Was that there available?
No, we had
trickery with it.
No, we had to negotiate it and end up purchasing it. Yeah, it's pretty much the way these days. You can't get a decent
it's
URL.
Impossible.
Clean,
it's good URL. It's cool. Adam, enjoy the chat. I think that was reasonably balanced, and I think we covered off this commission versus fixed, but the message, if you're tuning in, is go and do your research and check these guys out. Adam gave you the URL, upside.com.au, but I guess you're fortunate, Adam, because you're saying that the right customer views between sort of 500,000 and 3 million, which covers off most investment
It's a
properties.
pretty solid part of the market, to be fair.
So that's all right from a business case, but keep in touch. I'm quite keen to see how this goes. I get it. I understand how technology now should be an enabler and empowerer. I think for people, as a seller of real estate, you need as much visibility as possible to understand it. And if you can get that at the press of a button, that's great. But it still comes down to the human element. You got to like your real estate agent as well. If you don't get on, it's probably not going to work, right?
Exactly right. And I guess that's the thing that we've been working hard to do is hire one, agents who have experienced, know how to get a result, but two, quite authentic. Like I think it's more important to actually be authentic these days than being, I hate to say it, slick, right? So, part of getting a great result is actually servicing your buyers well and connecting well with the potential buyers as well as the vendors. And I think, the authenticity and the genuine connection you have with another person, if you're in sales, it's way more powerful than, being maybe a little bit polished and slick and pumped out of the same little factory.
Yeah, and I'm going to continue for another couple of minutes. Is that all right, Sam? Yeah, I'm getting a nod from the producer here. It's going a little bit longer. But it just made me think, we're talking about PropTech, right? We're talking about selling stuff. And we've been talking about the agent and the service it provides the vendor, the person selling the property. But the other big part of this is how well you can effectively market a property to attract as many potential buyers as possible. And used to be done with adverts in the paper and vendor paid advertising. There's a lot of good agents that still leverage print and the power of print. We've spoken about it beforehand. For properties is a great way to market it. It might depend on the price point, but it should be part of a mix. you've got domain and realestate.com, online platforms, selling real estate. They're very cluttered now to actually they're very smart, sophisticated, no doubt, but there's a lot of stuff in there you got to weed through. How do you think, talking about PropTech, how do you think the marketing of real estate to attract buyers will change in the future? Have you got any sort of views on that? You reckon it's going to be just finessed from where it is right now, or it's going to be completely transformed?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be how well the two big players evolve from here, and if there's a left field entrant. So I think it'd be hard to unseat them based on where they are and the control they have in the space. And you know, I'm aware there's been several efforts by the industry to try and wrestle back control over the years, and it's never worked out. So, but I do think there is a possibility for them to be, you know, I guess, blindsided, and it's probably what keeps their board up at night about what could come into play and who might be at that table. But you know, my personal view is I do think that it's unlikely to change dramatically. I think it will evolve, and the way they present products and how deeply they get into the transactional side of it will change. I think they're busily trying to diversify now, as you've seen them get into loans and home maintenance and various other things.
All this sort of stuff.
So, you know, that's the way they can increase their revenue right now. But we'll see, because I think what's happened in the past is you know, historically the only way they've increased their bottom line is by upping the prices to everyone, and then there's a point where there's a point where that has created problems in the past where there's been absolute rebellion, and then they've had to come back. So, you know, I think there's a fine line that they can walk, and they've got to be careful, because otherwise it will open the door. I mean, you know, at one point, you know, it's not an equivalency, but it is interesting. At one point, you know, Facebook didn't exist, and it was our old mate, I've forgotten the name now even. How have I forgotten the name?
MySpace.
MySpace, exactly right. So MySpace was the world dominant social network, and no one thought that was going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, Facebook came along. And so it's a little different in this space, but things can happen like that. And you never know. Like, there's some pretty powerful players in adjacencies, such as the banks and such as other major publishers who, you know, or realty groups, or even global players like, you know, I remember I did a stint at CBA, which was, you know, pretty fascinating, and you know, they took very seriously the potential threat of people like Apple as a financial institution. And you know, you go back 20 years, would you honestly think that the major banks would consider a technology company or a computer company a threat? And so these things can happen.
Well, it's where the power lies now, because it's not, the tech is important and the way you do it is important, but it's about having the influence, and the distribution and the ability to influence what people think is where the power is. And that's the reason why Apples, who connect with how many umpteen hundreds of millions of people across the world. But just
well, just on that, Amazon trialing a real estate referral program.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So and you know, they are the biggest retailer in the US and globally, and you know, they at some point, if they look to Australia, that's going to be interesting, right?
Well, they've got the connectivity. They've got they know the people. They know how to reach them. They've got a relationship. They know everything about them.
In very deep pockets.
Very deep pockets. So watch your space. But what you're saying, though, based on Upside, and irrespective of whether you go down a fixed fee or a variable commission rate, agents are here to stay, though, aren't they?
I believe so. Certainly for the next 10 to 20 years, you know, unless something dramatically changes. I can't see the do-it-yourself model. You know, it'll grow slowly, but you know, people, you know, it's a transaction that doesn't happen very often, and because of that, you know, you're not familiar with it and you need help, and it's a scary, very, very large transaction. So it sort of feels like you're always going to want someone to help hold your hand.
And you know, I agree with that, but I see it a lot more practical, because you know, as a property investor, and I have a reasonably large portfolio, I'm not going to do it myself.
Well, that's the other side of it, right? So
I got the time, the inclination, the energy, the expertise. I'll pay someone to do it. Thank you very
exactly
much.
Right.
You know, like I do, and we talk about it all the time on the Smart Property Investment Show. You know, surround yourself with an A-team of people who can do the stuff that needs to be done a lot better than you can. I'm not a real estate agent. Last thing I want to do is sell a property. I'm not going to stand there doing open home. Someone else can do that for me. Who's better at it, enjoys doing it. But anyway, I'm going to finish on that note. So it's got us to a nice point. Adam, I enjoyed the chat, mate. Thanks for coming in. So go and check it out. Adam Rigby from Upside Realty, upside.com.au. I had a quick look today. I'm going to go back and have another look with a different mindset on. So we'll get you back in some point soon. Remember to check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. If you're not subscribing yet to our daily morning market intelligence, like tens of thousands of other Australians, the first to hear what's going on in property and property investment. smartpropertyinvestment.com.au/subscribe. If you like getting your info from social media, you are very welcome. We have Smart Property HQ across all the different social channels, and like us, follow us, and tune into what we're up to. And please remember to keep those reviews coming on iTunes. We do love them, and as I've said many times beforehand, it's just not me here who is talking behind the microphone. It's a big team who curate all of our guests and create what we do here. So a big shout out to them. But if you like what we're doing, leave a comment, leave some 5 stars, and they'd be very appreciative of it all. We'll be back again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.